Why is it important for you, you, one person, to take a stand for faith, family, and freedom? Because you may make or break the future of our nation. Why do I say this? Because it happened before, but with the founding of the nation. One man's vote caused the 13 colonies to declare their independence from England and become a free nation. If he had voted no or not voted at all, we wouldn't be the United States of America. His name was Caesar Rodney, born in Delaware and a representative to the Continental Congress. He was sick in bed and missed the first vote. The other two reps from Delaware split their votes, one up, one down. He needed to break the tie. He rode through rain, lightning, mud, and the like, and needed to be pried off his horse when he made it to Philly, just in time to cast his vote yes. By the way, he had cancer of the face. His jaw was eaten away. His only hope for a cure was a doctor in England. With his vote, he knew he'd never see England again and would die. But he did it anyway, because it was the right thing to do.
An Independence Day message from the American Family Association.
Okay, first, I can hear all the work that went into this. I know that this was an ambitious production. You didn't just, throw it off. You gave a lot of thought and you spent a lot of time. And what I'm going to say is fairly critical of it, but I want to recognize up front that sometimes you hear stuff that's just like, well, it's stupid. Or you hear stuff where, well, that's so lazy. How could you do that? This was not lazy. It wasn't stupid. I think there are some structural challenges that I'd like to mention. Starting with, I don't believe the guy who's talking. I don't believe that's a real person.
I have to go. Don't mean to jump in on your thing, but I have to agree with you. For a second, for a moment, I thought we were going to go back and forth, and I thought this was a demo review, so I took my pen out, and okay, really, and my first thing that I started to write down was NYC ... really, question mark. There you go. And
yeah.
Oh, it's a spot, so I put my thing down, but same thing.
Yeah, if we can hear, and I'm about to say you, I don't know who it was, but if we can hear you trying to sound like a New Yorker, or trying to sound sexy, or trying to sound old, or whatever the heck it is, you don't do it. We have to, as the audience, we have to think, oh, where'd they get that New Yorker?
The comedy should carry it if the comedy's good.
Yeah, no, that's true. And most people, especially in radio, they don't have the confidence in whatever comedy is there. And so, okay, let's goose it wherever we can. So right away, From the first sounds, my reaction as a listener is you're lying to me. The spot. This is somebody who thinks I'm dumb enough to believe that that's a New Yorker. And it's not. And if you don't have anyone who can convince me it's a New Yorker, fine. Just have somebody do it with the kind of attitude that you want to be presented. And it doesn't matter if they're actually, if they do it sounding exactly like they're from Maine or from Mississippi or from Guatemala. That's not what's important. What's important is the real person with this attitude that you're trying to get by labeling him a New Yorker. The story itself is interesting. The story that you told is interesting. I didn't know, I don't think any of that, but you distract from it with the overuse of sound effects. And this is really common, and I don't know the person who submitted this. You might be an old pro. You might have been in the business 30 years. I don't know. But you'll hear this a lot from people in their first few years in radio, in which they feel that they have to get a sound effect for every word on the page. And you really want to have as few, you want to have zero extraneous sounds, and you want to have as few additional sounds as possible. You want to use only what's necessary. So for example, when you say, he was born in Delaware, so you heard that line? Okay, were you confused by that when he said he was born in Delaware? Were you thinking, what does that, I don't get it, what does that mean?
It's just so much chaos. There's so much, yeah.
But just that line, is anyone here confused? Like, what do you mean born? I don't get it. No, he was born in Delaware. We really don't need to have the sound of a baby crying in the background. Birth. We understand that concept. And so the baby crying, if you heard it, and actually it's easy to miss because there was a cacophony of sound throughout the spot.
Well, there's a general nervousness to all those choices, to hiding behind an accent, to overstuffing sound effects to help support story. It just feels like anxiety's driving choices.
Yeah, but well, and it's funny because I interpret it we have no way of knowing which of us is right. I interpret it simply as the person who produced it really wanting to make sure he painted the picture, you know,
Right.
out of.
But it's not trusting the story or the comedy. It's
Yeah.
packing. It's like there's
Right.
packing peanuts all around it, and I can't see the thing.
And also maybe having been told, you know, radio is theater of the mind, and which it is, but you remember, just for a moment, remember the first time you heard about tsunami. You never heard the word before, and the first time it was in the news big time, and what that represented to you. Okay, you probably don't need sounds to reinforce. That's theater of the mind. Whatever you just experienced was theater of the mind. You know, those emotions, those memories, those sights, sounds, whatever it was. And most of the theater of the mind does take place in the mind. It doesn't take place on the console dropping in sound effects. And you could hear a sound effect, basically you put in a sound effect wherever you could find an excuse. The guy says he needed to break the tie of the vote, and we heard the sound of a whip cracking. And to me, that connection is somewhat tenuous to begin with, but even so, his vote was needed to break the tie. Well, we get it. That has drama. If he hadn't voted this way, history might have been different. Why are we hearing a whip cracking? And I do think that does suggest a lack of confidence in the strength of the story itself. Bottom line is if the sound doesn't increase the clarity or the impact of the message, the sound should not be there. And by sound, I mean effect, I mean music, I mean voice, anything. Either it increases the clarity or it increases the impact of the message. And if it does neither, it shouldn't be there. You know, and
Actually, could it be said that if it does neither, it does the contrary?
yeah, there is no such thing as a neutral sound in a commercial or a promo.
Right. If
there
it's
is
not
nothing that
helpful,
has
it's
no
harmful.
impact.
Right. If it's not helpful, it's actually corrosive.
Yeah. It's not like, okay, no harm, no foul. No, wait a second. Either a move forward or took us backward. Absolutely. You had a great story to work with, and I understand that it got really, really dramatic, but you used more than I think you should have. The additional info at the end, you know, about the guys having cancer, that's dramatic, but I think maybe you told a little too much of the story within this little 60-second frame. You know, by now, this has become the tragic story of one man's dedication. And that's compelling, but it's supposed to be the story of how one vote made a difference. So which is it? Are you telling us the tragic story, or are you telling us the impact of one vote? It's good storytelling to a point. I think you tried to cram in too much. And just one final note, it's a long-established radio advertising rule that when you're trying to motivate people to take a positive action, you really want to avoid using the phrase cancer of the face whenever possible. So again, summing up, you know, I clearly admire the intent here. Dial it back, cut it in half. You know, literally, look at all the words, throw half of them out, and just focus on the story of how this one man's vote made a difference. And the whole cancer thing, that's interesting, but that's a different story.
What's so shocking, it eclipses other content.
You know, exactly. You walk away from that story, holy, cancer of the face. Man, you ever hear that? Oh, yeah, my uncle, blah, 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 blah. And it becomes a very compelling image, but I don't think you walk away thinking about the power of one vote to change history.